Escape to the metaverse, better act like you know. Yeah, you are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzo show. Yeah, escape to the metaverse, better act like you know. Yeah, you are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzo show. Yeah, escape to the metaverse, better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzo show. Yeah, escape to the metaverse, better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew and Rizzo show. Yeah.
Hey everyone, before we begin this week's episode of the Matthew and Rizzle Show, just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Proof of Beauty. Proof of Beauty is an experimental digital experience studio. The blockchain is their canvas and the tokens are their brush. You can learn more about Proof of Beauty by checking out pob.studio. You can follow them on Twitter as well at PRRF Beauty. That's PRRF Beauty on Twitter and pob.studio on their homepage to learn more about their projects like Hash, London, and Publico. Thank you and enjoy the show. Okay, Jiho, welcome back to the Matthew and Rizzle Show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been crazy times. It's been a while since I've been on, so I'm just excited to be back.
Yeah, pretty much not just night and day, but like pretty much a different century we're living in since the last time we talked in crypto time. Really excited to dive into everything that you're doing at Axie Infinity, nation building, all that monumental stuff. But right now, for the like 1 or 3 people that don't know who you are or maybe a little bit unfamiliar with Axie Infinity, give us a little intro of yourself, Axie Infinity, and then jump into that state of Axie Nation.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jiho. I'm a co-founder of Sky Mavis. We're the inventors, the creators of Axie Infinity. And I've always grew up as a collector, as a gamer. I was never really interested in crypto when it was just about financial things. But then, I stumbled into NFTs and CryptoKitties, and I think it really engaged my collector side, my gamer side. Even I was really into biology, right? Like I used to collect insects and fossils, and I was actually like a biology champion or something when I was in high school. So I felt like the NFTs were really engaging me on a level that Bitcoin hadn't been. I felt drawn to it, and I wanted to become a community member. I kind of fell down the rabbit hole. A couple months later, I found a project called Axie Infinity. And, I just joined as a community member, just started trying to help, do work. And that led me down this amazing path where, right, like 2 months later, I had given my dog to my parents, moved to Vietnam, and, been doing more and more with the project over time. If you're not familiar with Axie, Axies are fierce but adorable digital pets. You can battle them, you can collect them, you can use them to actually earn different tokens with real world value. Axie has grown a lot. We now have just about 3 million unique Axie holders. Around 2.5 million people play the game every single day. We're the number 1 NFT project of all time by volume, just around $3.8 billion in total trading volume just on our in-house marketplace.
Dude, that's just throwing out those numbers is so crazy, man. I caught up with Jiho like a couple of weeks ago, and we were just sort of reminiscing about the days on Scent where Jiho's out there like making posts trying to like explain to people what Axie is, and then actually met him in real life at NFT NYC in 2019 or whatever, 2020, whatever that was, when it was like 20 of us in a dive bar or something like that afterwards. And, the insane run up that Axie has had to the amount of users and exposures. And, like you were saying, man, number 1 NFT project of all time is just staggering. Dude, from, if you were to zoom out, was it like a steady run up, build up, or was there a couple moments in time where you can look back on it and be like, whoa, that was definitely, we knew the tipping point was happening, or big picture stuff?
Sure. So I'm a strong believer that in order to be big, you must first be small and nimble. So we had our, couple of years where we were building in relative obscurity with the early members of our community. I think that was really important. We always had confidence. We thought that, right, NFTs were going to change the world. And, as long as that was the case, right, we were positioned to be in a really good spot, as long as we continued to build and execute on our vision. The timing, right, it's always difficult to predict, like, when exactly things are going to kind of blow up for you. I think, like, we even, like, we got a lot more popular a bit faster than we could have ever dreamed. That's also caused, its share of growing pains as well. But I think the key was really grinding it out through the bear market with our community, making sure that we have this kind of culture of, being missionaries and into creating value. And I think that was really key for us.
Dude, tell us about your community journey. I know way back in the day in that dive bar, when the first time that I met you in person, at that point you were like the community guy. You were the shepherd. You were the like dear leader of Axie Nation at that time, which was pretty much like an island. Like every other NFT project out there, handful of users growing steadily but surely. But definitely very, very like early days. Kind of tell us, and again, like it's been a century in crypto time, but it really hasn't been all that long of a time since you joined Axie and since everything like blew up recently. How has that community journey been for you? And like, how do you think about community now at this sort of scale? And how does Axie think about community at this scale?
Okay, first of all, community is the bedrock upon which these nations, these islands are being built, right? Like, I think it's the unforkable, right, and the moat that every project that wants to achieve great things needs to cultivate. I think, right, like that really is what Web3 is about to me, is, right, like removing middlemen that are extracting from the community and then using the value that was formerly being like vampired out by these middlemen and sharing that with the community for the work that they are doing, right? So any application, right, my principle for blockchain is any application where the users are doing a majority of the work but not receiving a majority of the value, this is ripe for disruption. So we just, really applied that to the Axie community from the early days. And, right, like our principles, right, like community, I think the community building is like, what principles are you starting out with, right? For us, that was like co-creation, co-ownership. I think those are like the two main principles, right? So, making sure that we're building together and making sure that we're sharing value together, making sure that people understand that, because this is kind of a new, this is kind of a new concept. So I think also, right, like repetition, right, like community building a lot is, right, like just repeating the same things over and over and over again. And, right, understanding that, hey, the people that I'm talking to today and the people that are listening today, a lot of them may not have been here last week, last month, last year. So, right, even if you feel like you've said things before, right, like I think, like, making sure that you're like scaling your communication is really important. I also think of communities in terms of like ant colonies in some way, right? Where, right, how do you have like colonies of millions of ants where every ant knows, right, like the marching orders, right? The chemical signals are being transmitted to every single ant in the colony, and this is the way that information efficiently is transmitted. I think, right, communities is a lot like that, where it's like, what are the systems? What is the endocrine system of your community that's spreading these chemical messages that then make sure that we're coordinating efficiently to, right, get larger, to grow, to build things together.
This is like a fascinating subject of conversation for me, and I love the way you described like communication scaling. I feel like that's something that's very often like swept under the rug or overlooked, and is crucial. Obviously, like what you're saying, especially when you're growing at that sort of scale. This whole subject matter is fascinating to me, man. Like, were there different things that you've tried, or like pitfalls along the way in terms of like scaling? I like Matt was saying, I'm not sure if it was before we started or like right at the beginning. You're very much in uncharted territory in terms of like building out this community within like a crypto NFT like gaming, vibe. So yeah, man, what were some of the things you've tried that have either like worked really well or like been really helpful to scale to this capacity, or like just conversely, were there any things that you like, thought would have been a great idea to, continue to build out the community and just realize that it wasn't practical or didn't make sense?
I think my personal strategy is I like to experiment. I like to try a bunch of different things. I think, Axie is really known for in the early days, right? Like our Discord was one of the most interesting places on the planet, right? Where, we were super active in the Discord greatly. There were every day in our Discord is like a 24/7 impromptu AMA, especially in the early days. I actually want to go back to the roots of having that happen more. But yeah, like we were treating it like a 24/7 AMA where, right, we're talking to our community kind of almost like it's very directly. I'm still the number one messenger, right? I still have the highest number of messages in the Axie Discord. So yeah, I think that was really important in the early days. Like Discord, I think was like the town hall, the town square. I think we're the first game kind of like that migrated to like using Substack for official communications. I found that to be like a really easy way to basically, right, like, okay, people are signing up, they're giving us their email. The ones that really want to hear from us can hear from us, and then blasting that out. And I also think like, yeah, little things like Medium, in my opinion, like the font, right? It's just like, I don't know, the formatting is too ugly, so people don't want to read it. So I had a theory that Substack would just make for better like written content. But yeah, I'm also interested in like trying out like Mirror now as well. So yeah, and I think like, right, like just doing a lot of AMAs. Like I think I rarely ever said or live streams or podcasts, right? Like I think I've done like a bunch, right? And I think you learn so much, and I think you learn like what type of communication resonates when you're actually explaining and teaching. And then I think that can also, right, have implications on, right, even, right, how you present yourself to the outside world on your front end, on your website, through your announcement articles, and what the messaging on your social platforms as well. So yeah, I'm trying to think what else, right? Like I think just like speaking directly to the community members, like doing unscalable things, right? Like I think some founders, they might not be interested in talking to their users and becoming friends with their users. But yeah, like I think that's one of the things that we did is like, our users, especially like, the players from 2018, 2019, 2020, like in the early days, like they're, right, like we went through really difficult times together, right? I think relationships are formed through adversity. I think that's also why like bear markets are really important. And that's also one of the struggles of community building, over the last year, where, it's been like, up only, and people are thinking about money a lot rather than relationships and value.
I love
actually got the message that you just got about the update about the SLP, whatever. And I know that's like a topic that has been on a lot of folks' mind in the Axie community and everything. And I read the message and actually was thinking, even before you mentioned this, I was like, wow, the language and the way that this challenge is being communicated to the community sounds like very inclusive, and like you guys are, having a direct conversation with the community about, and being very forthright about like this is a challenge that you guys are facing. And I just thought that was very interesting, man. I feel like anything on the type of scale that Axie has like a very like linear approach to the community, where most of their communication channels are essentially like speakers, or they're just one-way communication. But I actually thought about that and feel like your ethos, I assume you're not writing these emails. If you do, they come off very well, but your ethos seems to be passed down the line very well, man. And the colony seems to have like got the message that that's the way you guys want to communicate with people. And I just thought that was very like unusual in a really positive way, honestly, man. Man, I'm sorry, dude. I think I cut you off. That was just more of like a general comment.
No. I fucking love this conversation and like this pheromone trail that Jiho has left for the community to kind of follow through all these different means and measures that you're talking about. It's fascinating, but I'm still super curious, like at this scale now with millions of of players and participants and members and citizens of Axie Nation. Like, what is different today than before? Or are you just, and is the whole team and the whole community sort of just doing the same thing just across like a larger number of community leaders, community shepherds? Like, how has the scale impacted your approach to community?
We've seen many leaders step up from within the community. Each one has their kind of circle of influence, right? For some, this is being expressed as a guild. Others, right, they're content creators with, followers and subscribers. So yeah, we're starting to see that where, right, society is, there are subcultures that are forming within Axie. So this is all, right, healthy. It's all part of the process. On the other hand, right, like we only have 800,000 spots in our Discord, which is crazy, right? So Axie is one of the 5, I believe, capped Discords in the world. Like even if you're, right, Fortnite or World of Warcraft, you cannot have more than 800,000 people in your Discord. So we're up there with like Fortnite, World of Warcraft, Genshin Impact, Mr. Beast as the maxed out Discord servers in the world. So that's also a challenge, right? Like, in the Discord is, right, one way that we can kind of speak more directly to the community, right? And then if people can't get in there, right, like how do you work with that? And that's also where I think like my Twitter started getting bigger this year, because that was, right, more of a scalable way to make information go viral within the community as well. So yeah, I think like every tool, right, every medium kind of has its purpose, right? Where, Discord is kind of like super real time. Twitter is, right, for making sure the right information goes viral at the right time. Substack is for, right, like, sending out, it's similar to Twitter too, right? Where you're sending out emails to make sure everyone's aware of what's happening. So yeah, it's a combination, right? And then just talking to local community leaders, repetition. I think like people need to hear the same thing like 12 times before it actually is retained. So that's one of the things that I think like some people, they might find that annoying where it seems like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I have that number like 12 in my mind often when I'm doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it's also, right, it's been about empowering the community to act, more like owners, which they are, than just, right, like passive observers or passive participants. We've been scaling out the community and the growth team here at Sky Mavis and Axie as well. So it's been amazing. I think like some of the hardest, most difficult problems have emerged over the last year too, right? It's like where, what happens if a content creator or streamer is like, I don't know, doing things to kind of purposely hurt the network, or is like bullying other people, right? What are the boundaries? Like, how can we enforce certain norms and rules and standards within the Axie Nation, right? Do we need a constitution? Do we need like judges? Do we need juries, right? Like with the lack of a legal structure that's kind of like native to our universe, it has started to basically bring up questions that, we're starting to really think about the correct answers to, which I think have only like difficult but interesting paths to resolution.
On that front, like what direction are you guys kind of steering the ship towards when it comes?
Yeah, man, that's what I was going. Like, say more, man.
Say more.
Yeah, I mean, I think, right, there are short-term things and then there are long-term things, right? Long-term, some form of, right, like, yeah, like having some, ways to get the community involved in governance, I think makes a lot of sense. But yeah, in the short term, right, like how do we build towards that? I think, right, for example, I'll just use some examples. So, eventually, right, like we might want the game balance there to be like a game balance committee or a council, or an economic balancing council, right? I think the first step is to ask for people's feedback in a structured way. So with we're going to do a balancing patch for season 20, which is the 20th season of Axie Infinity. It's kind of crazy to me.
Jesus, man.
Each season, seasons have last like, sometimes like months. So the 20th season is coming and we're going to do balancing for it. So, I basically just shared my Google sheet that we do balancing out of. I shared it with the community, told them to make a copy and to propose their changes using a certain hashtag. And yeah, the response has been crazy. I think we've had like 60 to 100 submissions already. Some people put a lot of work and a lot of thought into this, and I actually found them quite helpful as well. So yeah, I think like that's doing stuff like that is the first step towards right, like because I think first before people, I think people want to be heard. I think people want to have a voice, and when you empower them to do that, you know, they feel more. They feel better. They feel more engaged, and they actually start to have an impact, and they actually lessen your workload. And right, I think like I was really lazy growing up, which I think is like my form of leadership. Where right, it's like I'm just trying to empower people to kind of fill in the gaps and understand what is needed to be done. Rather than I'm not micromanaging. And I think that's the type of scalable coordination that works with crypto, right? Like if you're telling every single person, every user what to do, it just doesn't work, right? So I think like laziness around community building is actually scalability, if that makes sense.
I think you're right, man. I mean, there's a lot of like delegation that has to happen, especially as the community continues to grow. I mean, like Matt was saying, like you were out here like on the forefront of it in the very beginning, but you can't like always be that person as the community just continues to grow at such a rapid clip. Where do you source like most of the people who help you out like from within the community? Do you hire from outside? Is it like some combination of those things? Where do you find most of because obviously, man, like, you know, it sounds fine just like, I just got to delegate some stuff, but you got to really have good people that you trust. And like you're saying that you can empower and believe in the ethos and everything. Where do you find all your good people from, man?
I think it's a combination. A lot of them, right, are from the Axie community and know a bit about Axie or a lot about Axie, right? I think we just hired Jeff K from Discord's product team, and I think he worked on the Web3 integration. But yeah, we just hired him from Discord a couple months back, and he was someone that, you know, he worked on Discord's product team and he played Axie at night. He had a Mystic Axie, right? So that's kind of like the hybrid, right? Like type of person. Now that we're bringing all these new people into Web3, into crypto, a lot of them are doing really awesome stuff in the real world or the old world, I guess. That you know, they're bringing their talents and they're bringing their talents to our nation, right? It's like when you're starting out a country, right? Like you need doctors, right? You need builders, and so everyone's bringing their kind of unique skills over, right? And I think also, right, it's like there are different ways to work on Axie, right? Like you can, right? Yes, you can come work for Sky Mavis, but also, like, you know, you can just start working, and I think that's also cool because there are different ways to kind of also have a sustainable living, right? Where you might be running a scholarship or a guild or making content and kind of, you know, surviving off a combination of this.
It's so fascinating. I mean, hiring the head of product or someone who worked on product at Discord into Axie as an actual player, it's amazing. And it's just a testament, I think, to like your leadership and just everything that Axie embodies. I think all the good vibes and all that good stuff. And you're mentioning like nation states forming need like doctors and lawyers and like well-educated people. Super obscure reference, but like when North Korea was just getting started, like they totally pillaged and like literally kidnapped like 60 to 70% of the entire population of doctors and lawyers and highly educated people from Seoul, like for that very reason. Just the parallels are crazy. And dude, Jiho, like honestly, everything, and I could talk about community all day and night and like forever. It's endlessly fascinating, especially when it comes to digital native community building, which you and Axie will definitely be case studies cited time after time in like the most prestigious business schools across the world. But like Sky Mavis and everything that you're doing over at Axie is also doing incredibly amazing work on the technical side, right? Like, I mean, you built up Ronin, like the whole game itself, you're building up a virtual world around the Axie creatures, right? So like, tell me about what's going on the technical front. Like, what's the next step or evolution of the actual game, of the ecosystem, of the product?
Yeah, so in the early days of Axie, right, we were building on Ethereum, and that was, that was an awesome time. Those are some of the best days of our lives where, right, it's kind of like there was a lot of pressure, there was a lot of friction, but I kind of see that as like the hyperbolic time chamber, right, from Dragon Ball Z, where all of that is actually making you stronger. And so we started building Ronin, our custom Ethereum sidechain, and really when we deployed and moved everything over to Ronin, that's actually when, right, like all the hard work that we've been building, all that momentum really catalyzed, right? That's kind of like when we hit activation energy and just started to experience exponential growth. So yeah, it is definitely, right, like despite all the awesome, right, like despite the art, the community, right, the game, none of that, would have really been unleashed without the infrastructure upgrades that our engineers allowed us and built this year. So this year was a huge year of infra upgrades where, Ronin, we released Ronin mainnet in February, migrated all the Axies over to April. We then started growing exponentially. We released the Axis staking in September, October, and then our own native decentralized exchange called Katana, which we released in November. So we're strong believers that, right, like side chains and layer twos are super necessary for NFT scalability. We believe that there are going to be a lot of different options. We believe that a decentralized exchange for the exchange, right, kind of like the exchange of in-game resources, is going to be key. It's going to be like a prerequisite for any blockchain that's looking to host NFT or gaming activity. Obviously we have our own marketplace, which I think like can be upgraded to be more of a generalized NFT marketplace over time as well. So yeah, I just like, I'm in awe of our engineers. Like they do so much. And yeah, I think they don't get enough credit for, how amazing they are. But like we can talk about community building, right? All we want, but if you don't have the tech, you don't have the products to back it up, then it actually means nothing, in my opinion. So, our engineers are incredible. I'll also say that, right, like this year was a year of huge infrastructure upgrades, but 2022, the big theme is going to be gameplay content. And I know our community is super excited to get their hands on, more utility for their Axies, more experiences within this kind of theme park with NFT ticketing system.
Dude, I'm interested to hear about your decision to sort of, go on your own with the Ronin wallet versus, there are a bunch of other options out there rather than sort of reinventing the wheel. I don't know if that's quite the right term for what you guys have done with the Ronin wallet, but why was that the call? And was that like an obvious decision, or was that like the source of a lot of controversy or anything? It seems like a massive undertaking to just sort of build out your own, blockchain essentially. So yeah, man, what was that whole process like?
We're like it's kind of interesting, right? Like the desire to build a lot of this stuff for ourselves, by ourselves, right? It kind of goes a little bit contrary to some of the ideals. I think that I think the crypto community kind of shares, right? Which is like, right, like reusing other people's infrastructure and making these kind of like Frankenstein applications. I think our approach is a little bit different, where we're kind of like the sushi chef that like carves his own chairs in his restaurant or his bar, right, out of wood or something like that, right? Where it's like everything we like to handcraft and have our fingerprints over our work, and we want to ensure that our players, our community, are having a beautiful experience. So that's kind of like the way that we're looking at it. So, right, from that angle, right, it made sense for us to make our own wallet. It made sense for us to build our own chain. We actually tried using, right, like we used Loom Network in the early days, and that was like a really bad experience. We realized that, right, it was just too early to really bet on anyone other than ourselves. So yeah, I think that's also been one of our signature characteristics, where, we have our own chain, we have our own wallet, we have our own marketplace, and our community loves it because it's all, kind of unified. But yeah, I think like long term, right, like, we also want to have like different games, different IP right, using Ronin, using our infrastructure as well. So we also think that there was an opportunity to set the standard. We didn't believe that whatever was currently the meta, or right, like the standard within NFT tooling, we didn't believe that was like forever locked in. So we also see the opportunity to set a new standard for NFT gaming infrastructure and I guess peripheral applications, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and I think that's such a sharp point too, and just kind of like drive it home. Like, no one's going to build your product for you, and there may be like all these other sort of related technology options out there, but like at the end of the day, if it's not a good fit, like you got to build it yourself. And again, just like another testament to like the tech and engineer team that you have over at Axie Infinity. SkyMave is helping to drive this whole thing forward. But zooming out a little bit, there's definitely so much energy around blockchain gaming, Web3 gaming, Metaverse gaming, whatever you want to call it. But obviously Axie has kind of inspired. Where, like, if you zoom to outer space and you're looking at all the movement towards like play to earn gaming, incorporating crypto into like legacy games, like where do you see crypto and gaming converging going forward? Like, what's your take on the whole ecosystem as it's sort of like moving around beneath your feet right now?
I think that the killer loop is to basically not use publishers, right? Not use app stores, and right, like just take all that money that you're giving to the app stores and publishers and sharing that with the community. So more so than NFTs, I see that as the thing that will, basically make these games more interesting and more player aligned. And right, I think, in my opinion, that's actually what created, right, like play and earn, right, like the ability to turn your time and effort easily without friction into real value. Right, that was actually the killer use case that scaled to millions. Right, it wasn't just like having a game with NFTs in it, if that makes sense. So I think this may be a little bit contrarian. It's not what people thought would be the initial use case, but as CryptoKitty players, we believe that was actually what people found interesting, because we're like, okay, like why did people find CryptoKitties more interesting than other crypto applications at that time? Well, there was this feedback loop for a little bit where you could breed kitties and make money. So then a lot of, I think, Axie's design principles were like, how would we create a system where this was sustainable over a long period of time / forever? So I think like that's kind of the, I think that's the mindset. I think that, right, the first generation of NFT experiments, especially from larger game studios, will not be around sharing ownership of the ecosystem. It will just be around, either selling or giving out NFTs, which I think basically will mean that those experiments will be small or not interesting and not really change the game for a while. I think it's really only, right, where basically you're, right, like blockchain and crypto is about cutting out middlemen and then sharing the value those middlemen were extracting with the community. So basically, if you want to figure out like what is the route for gaming, I think like it's more so in that context, right? It's like this is more about, right, empowering people, giving them freedom, right? Like, yes, allowing their game assets to be NFTs like is an aspect of that, but it's I think that's only like part of the recipe, if that makes sense.
No, dude, I love, and Matt knows, man, I genuinely love your ethos, and it's one of the things that I've always believed in, and one of the reasons that I'm here as well. Dude, just in terms of like tokenomics and like other games and gaming experiences being anywhere on the scale of like, something close to play to earn, like what Axie has done. My theory is that, a lot of these more complex games will probably do exactly what you said. They'll just like give out some NFTs. I assume like the tokenomics of balancing like a well fleshed out ecosystem in like, some of these, A-list games that are coming out on like all the new systems or whatever would be like incredibly difficult on like a decentralized landscape. And I'm sure like you found that like with Axie, which is, a very complex game in itself. But you've sort of been able to grow that ecosystem and those tokenomics, as the community has grown, and it's not like you're releasing, a game that has to have everything balanced and everything ready to go in order for people to, play to earn in a ecosystem that makes sense and just isn't going to crash when some troll does something or whatever. So, dude, I'm just genuinely interested to hear your thoughts on like the difficulties and like challenges of balancing tokenomics. And like, do you think there are game companies or anyone out there who has been like looking at this seriously and has a chance of like releasing something with like a well fleshed out like economy, or is this like an impossible challenge that we're going to be years out from seeing anyone like quite get it right?
There are legacy game studios that are taking looks at this and taking serious looks at this. A lot of them are reaching out to us and are getting educated and up to speed, and a lot of them are like value aligned, mission aligned, I believe. So it's gonna start to happen, but they're in education, and right, there aren't that many people that you can learn this kind of stuff from. I do think that it's going to be like transmitted from people or studios like us, people like us. So yeah, it's gonna be a process, and yeah, I think like the playbook is still being defined. I think also there is a lot of skepticism around it. There's a lot of skepticism around Axie that actually in some ways that helps us, because people, right, while people are skeptical and right, like, not really going, right, going all in and taking it super seriously, and starting to build, right? Like that's all time where we're working and building and kind of building out our lead over everyone else. So we're in this position where yes, we want to educate, but we also want to make sure that we're the top dog in the space. And when I say that, that's not out of that's not because I'm looking out for myself. I'm looking out for my community, if that makes sense. So like we're actually viciously competitive, and I think we can justify that because, right, like everything that we do, right, a majority of that value is being, right, like shared with the community. So I'll also say that, right, like if major game studios don't come in, right, that's also an opportunity for us. But I do think that they will. And it will also, a lot of them will be through, right, using our infrastructure and right, consulting with our product and kind of economy teams, even community, right? Like they're always asking about like, how do you build community and, this new era, right? And, they come to me. I also say that it's you have to build a time machine also, because it's a lot harder. The playbook is much different these days than it was in 2018.
100%. That last point I think is super important, because you're going to have, again, like I've been in these conversations too at Nifty Gateway, where you have these game houses coming in, they just want to learn. And that's beautiful to see. Honestly love to see it, because that's how like this ethos is transmitted throughout like the world, right? And getting people on board and activated and inspired by this new direction of empowering, enriching, and really like respecting the community, the user base, and all that good stuff. But like anyone coming in today, they're not going to have necessarily that benefit of being able to work with their user base to go around all these rough edges that initially pop up in the space. Like they're going to have to nail it on a lot of fronts for things to gain traction enough for them to continue scaling up. So, I mean, first mover advantage is a beautiful thing. You all have used it so masterfully. I'd really love to see it. But a couple moments ago, you had brought up the old crypto community, or CryptoKitty community, and the old user base there, which is like sort of your onboarding to the space in a lot of ways. And I know there's this like mafia of older users that you had all like hung around with. And I'm a big fan of like big shout outs and stuff like that. So anyone from the old CryptoKitty gang that like you just see doing amazing things that deserves a shout out, I'd love to honestly hear what everyone that you're hanging out with is doing.
I mean, I'm gonna miss people. It's gonna feel bad, but people that stand out are like Freak, who's built Axie tools, and he originally was building like CryptoKitty stuff. There's Cloud White, the absolute legend. I remember the first time I met him, the first time I saw him, he was streaming CryptoKitties, like doing fuck, marry, kill with your CryptoKitties or something like that. So I was like, what
sounds
is
about right?
That was intense. Chuck Fresco, also like, we used to be rivals in CryptoKitties, like going on the fancy chases against each other, but then also teaming up for one legendary dog cat extravaganza. Who else, right? There's Dan from OpenSea. We worked on kitty hats together. There's Ed, who's now also working at OpenSea. Yeah, like, the whole crew, like Jimmy, I used to fight with Jimmy, because he was working on something called Kitty Battles. And he said that Axie was not a competitor for CryptoKitties. He was a competitor for Kitty Battles or something like that. And like, we got in like a whole thing. I really went after him. I made some bad comments. Like, I actually really regret that. Yeah, Cranksy was out there. Like, we were competing. There were some heated moments. Like, I think we're on relatively good terms now. I hope to be. So yeah, that was the crew. Like, it was a lot of legends back then, and who have gone on to do awesome stuff in this space. So yeah, those were special times. We learned a lot, and we wouldn't be here without them.
Dude, that's so great. What an all-star list of people. I feel like fighting with Jim is like a rite of passage for like everyone who is here early on in the space. If you haven't had some disagreement with Jim and gotten into it with him, that's how we all like came up in this space at some point or another. Dude, do you have time to like look into other projects, collect other NFTs? Like, one of the things we always love to ask our guests is to, let us know what other projects that outside of their own that they're like interested in, that they just find cool, that they're collecting. Do you have time for that these days, or is it all Axie all the time?
I don't have as much time as as I would like. I'm also I'm hesitant. I have made some angel investments in various guilds mainly. So I think I'm not like going out and doing mints too much. There were a couple recent ones, like everyone can see my wallet on OpenSea, I guess. So it's just like you can check that out. But yeah, that's how I found Axie, right? Like, so I definitely do believe in going out there and exploring, and you learn a lot that way, and you meet a lot of awesome people. So that's something that I wish I had more time for. But I have friends too that kind of will keep me up to date on that kind of stuff, and sometimes I'll choose to follow them.
Dude, I understand you not wanting to be put out there for like endorsing a certain project or NFT or whatever. Are there certain like unrelated to Axie NFTs that you have from like, say, back in the day that are very meaningful to you? Or some people have like NFTs that they say probably everyone's got a price on something at some point, but like some things are like pretty close to priceless. I know I have some NFTs that I feel that way about. I know Matt does too. Are there certain things like that mean a lot to you that you've had in your wallet for a long time?
Yeah, I think like the dog cats that we bred in March of 2018. Me, Chuck, Woody Kitty, like we basically went on a special operation to breed like dog cats. These were like limited edition cats that they released for Chinese New Year. So there are only 88 of them. And we bred like 35. I think we still have around like 15 or something like that. So those are really special to me. Right. That was like, I think like, right, one of the first like examples of like people teaming up to kind of like, win something together in NFTs, in my opinion. So I think those are actually historic NFTs. And yeah, it was also like, I don't know, it was an amazing experience for me, like staying up for 2 days, just like mashing cats together. And that was one of the ways that kind of like I grew my brand in the early days, right? People knew me for that kind of stunt within the universe.
Awesome.
Amazing. Dude, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Like, I'm excited to go back and listen to this, honestly. But before we do wrap up, and since we are heading to the end of this, I just want to make sure that like any upcoming events, dates, handles that people need to be following, like shout all the things out before we wrap this up.
Yeah, so I want to start spreading this message now a little bit early, a little bit ahead of schedule. So this year we are going to be releasing an update to our battle system. You can basically think of it as an entirely new kind of expansion to the current battle system, right? So this is called Axie Infinity Origins. It's going to allow you to start playing, to get free Axies and fall in love with the universe, fall in love with the gameplay without making any economic decisions, right? So you'll be able to play the game, learn, how to use the cards, what Axies go well together, all before you have to, right, actually buy any NFTs or anything like that. So we think this is going to be huge. So yeah, if people, kind of feel like this mission and this type of ecosystem is something that they want to be a part of, I would definitely keep an eye out for the announcement around the release of that. And you'll just be able to kind of, just download and start playing more like a traditional gaming experience, but also, right, it'll be kind of a soft tunnel down the rabbit hole rather than something that's abrupt, which is, I think, the current state of the space. Otherwise, I'm just JIHOZ _Axie on Twitter. Follow me. It was awesome to be here.
Dude, man, honestly, an honor and a pleasure to know you, to watch you build and lead this emergent nation in the metaverse. It's really inspiring, dude. So thank you so much for your time jumping on the show with Rizzo and myself, and just keep doing you and keep on creating, man.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been great to catch up, and so much respect for what you guys are both doing, and let's keep pushing forward in 2022.
Hell yeah.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this week's episode. Just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Proof of Beauty. Proof of Beauty is an experimental digital experience studio. The blockchain is their canvas and the tokens are their brush. You can learn more about Proof of Beauty by checking out pob.studio. You can follow them on Twitter as well at PRRF Beauty. That's PRRF Beauty on Twitter, and pob.studio on their homepage to learn more about their projects like Hash, London, and Publico. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.